On our way home, the night slowed down, the road stretched endlessly, and somewhere between fatigue and anticipation, we stopped at a hotel, not for luxury, not for rest alone, but for something deeper, something unspoken. The walls of that room held silence, yet inside me a storm was alive. I realized how often we live two lives, the one the world sees, and the one we whisper to ourselves when no one is listening. That night was not about the place, it was about the mirror it placed before my soul. I felt the weight of choices, the pull of longing, the ache of desires that cannot always be named. It was there that I confronted the truth. Sometimes what we crave is not rest, but recognition, not sleep, but surrender, not arrival, but escape. The hotel became more than a stop, it became a confession, a crossroad where I met myself again. And as the night folded into dawn, I understood. Home is not always where you go. Sometimes home is where you finally admit what you've been running from all along. On our way home, the hotel was nothing more than a dot on the map, a place to pause, a structure of walls and windows meant for weary travelers. Yet as we entered, I realized it was more than brick and concrete. It was a breathing metaphor, a reflection of life itself. The world outside was in motion, cars rushing by, lights blinking across the highway, time moving as it always does. But inside those walls, time slowed down. The hotel became a still frame, a pause button pressed against the chaos of living. It was not the comfort of the bed or the silence of the corridor that struck me, but the space it created between what was and what could be. In that gap, the truth begins to rise, like smoke curling upward from a hidden fire. So often, we move through life without noticing the weight we carry. Responsibilities, roles, obligations, they cling to us like dust, so familiar we forget they are even there. But the moment we stop, the moment life forces us into a pause, we begin to feel them pressing down. The hotel was exactly that. A pause I didn't know I needed, a place where the echoes of my own heart grew louder. The stillness stripped away the noise of the journey, and I could finally hear the questions I had been avoiding. Who am I when the world isn't watching? What do I long for when no one is there to judge? The answers are not always gentle, and sometimes they arrive like thunder in the quiet. The hotel carried a paradox. It was temporary, fleeting, meant only for a night, yet it revealed something lasting. Within those walls, the masks we wear begin to loosen. A hotel does not demand history. It does not care who you were before you entered. It offers anonymity, and in that anonymity lies a strange kind of freedom. You are no one, and in being no one, you can, for a brief moment, become your truest self. That pause allowed me to sense the shadows I had ignored, the desires I had buried, the restless pulse of a soul wanting more. A pause in life is not passive, it is not simply waiting. It is a mirror, forcing us to see what constant movement allows us to avoid. The hotel was that mirror. The lamp glowing faintly in the corner, the distant hum of strangers in other rooms, the quiet that stretched like a blanket over everything. It all conspired to make me face myself. The pause became a reckoning. I realized that while we often crave destinations, what we truly need are these spaces in between, where we can strip away the roles, the titles, the expectations, and just breathe as ourselves. The road home would always be there, waiting, endless and demanding. But the hotel was rare. It gave me a pause, a moment suspended in time, where truth whispered louder than obligation. In that pause, I was reminded that sometimes the most profound awakenings do not happen at the end of the journey, but in the quiet intervals, where we dare to stop. We live two lives, and most of the time, the world only sees the one we carefully stitched together for them. It is polished, rehearsed, and safe. We wear it like a well-tailored suit, convincing others, and often ourselves, that this is all we are. This outer life is filled with duty, with the roles we are expected to play: parent, partner, provider, friend. It smiles when it must, nods at the right times, and speaks words that belong to tradition, culture, and expectation rather than to the trembling truth within us. But beneath that surface, hidden away like a forbidden journal, lies another life, raw and unfiltered, filled with unspoken desires, fears, and hungers that we cannot, or dare not, confess. The hotel reminded me of this duality, because in its quiet isolation, the second life began to stir. In the silence, the mask of the first life weakened, and the whisper of the hidden one grew louder. This hidden life is not about lies. It is about honesty that has been denied a stage. It is the ache in the chest when you long for more than routine. It is the spark of desire for freedom, recognition, adventure, or passion that doesn't fit neatly into the script you've been given. The outer life walks in daylight, measured and acceptable, but the inner life thrives in shadows, pulsing with the truths we keep only for ourselves. We are trained from childhood to present the outer life as the only reality. We are rewarded for our obedience to it, praised for how well we play our part. Yet deep inside, there is always the second life, waiting, restless. Sometimes it reveals itself in a glance that lingers too long, a dream that feels more real than waking, a silence where longing breathes. It is not shameful, it is human. But because it does not match the roles assigned to us, we hide it. We call it weakness, temptation, or fantasy, when in truth it may be the purest part of us. In that hotel, with the world outside moving on without me, I felt both lives pressing against each other. The one I carry for the world, neat and tidy, and the one I carry within, messy, alive, undeniable. The collision was not comfortable. It was unsettling, even frightening, but it was also liberating, because in that moment, I realized the hidden life is not meant to be an enemy. It is a guide, a compass pointing toward what is missing in the life we show. The whispers of the hidden life are not meant to destroy us, they are meant to remind us that we are still alive, that we have depths yet unexplored. Both lives exist in us, and both are real. The question is not whether we should silence one or cling to the other, but whether we have the courage to acknowledge them both. The outer life protects us, but the inner life defines us. And in rare moments of stillness, like that night, the inner life rises to the surface, asking not to be forgotten. Desire is not always tied to a person. That is the mistake we often make, thinking that longing must always have a face, a name, a body to attach itself to. But in truth, desire is far wider, far deeper than that. It is the heartbeat of the soul reaching for something beyond the ordinary, beyond the expected. It is not always about who, but about what. What we crave is recognition, the feeling that someone, somewhere, truly sees us. Not the version of us that walks through daylight, but the one that trembles in silence. We ache to be seen in our entirety, the broken pieces and the burning edges, the contradictions and the truths too sharp to say aloud. Recognition is not flattery, it is not applause. It is the quiet electricity of knowing another pair of eyes catches something in you that the world overlooks. And that is where desire often hides, in the hunger to be acknowledged, to no longer carry the burden of invisibility. A lifetime can pass with people knowing your name, your role, your duties, and yet not one of them knowing your soul. Recognition is the secret fire behind so many longings. Freedom, too, is a form of desire. Not freedom from responsibility, but freedom from the cage of pretense. To walk without the mask, even for a single night, even for a fleeting hour, is to taste life in its truest form. This is why desire cannot be confined to the realm of romance or flesh. It is a yearning for space where we can finally breathe without shame. It is the pull toward an unchained existence, even if only imagined, where nothing holds us back from being exactly who we are. And then there is authenticity, the deepest of all desires. We long for the permission to be real, to shed the polished skin the world demands and reveal the rawness underneath. Authenticity is not comfortable, it is not tidy, it is messy, unpredictable, and at times even painful, but it is also holy in its own way. The hunger for authenticity is the hunger for wholeness, for a life that reflects our inner truth rather than disguises it. Every sigh, every secret, every restless stirring of the heart points toward this need. When I sat in that hotel room, I realized the truth: desire is not a weakness, and it is not shameful. It is not about reaching for forbidden things, nor is it a flaw to suppress. Desire is the pulse of the soul reminding us we are alive. We think we want a person, a place, a thing, but what we are really searching for is the recognition of our existence, the freedom to be unbound, and the authenticity to live unmasked. It is not always about another body lying next to us. Sometimes it is about finding the courage to lie next to ourselves, without disguise, and not look away. Crossroads rarely arrive with signs pointing left or right, telling us which path to take. More often, they appear in moments so ordinary they almost go unnoticed. A quiet hotel room, a late night silence, a pause on the way home. It is in these between spaces, where the world is stripped of noise and urgency, that life presents us with choices we didn't know we were avoiding. These crossroads are not about geography, they are about the soul. They confront us with questions that do not have easy answers, questions we cannot outrun, no matter how far we travel. A crossroad feels like standing in a doorway between two lives. Behind us is the familiar path, the routines, the duties, the comfortable patterns that keep us safe but also keep us bound. Ahead lies the unknown, unmarked and uncertain, carrying both danger and possibility. The weight of such a moment is not in choosing left or right, but in realizing the choice itself cannot be avoided. To stay still is also to choose. To turn back is still a decision. Life demands something of us when we stand at a crossroad, even if all we want is for time to freeze. What makes these moments so powerful is that they often come quietly. No one else notices. No one else feels the trembling inside your chest, the way your thoughts run like fire through the darkness. On the surface, it looks like nothing. A night away, a room with 4 walls, a passing stop on the way home. But inside, the questions rise: who am I really? What do I want that I have been too afraid to name? What part of me have I buried so deeply that it only dares to surface in the silence of an unfamiliar room? The crossroad is not about external circumstances, it is about internal honesty. Silence is the great revealer. Without the constant hum of daily obligations, we begin to hear the whispers we have silenced for years. In that hotel room, it was impossible to hide from them. The crossroads appeared not as a grand event, but as a reflection in the mirror I had been avoiding. The truth was not comfortable. It never is. But in that discomfort, there was a strange kind of awakening, a realization that choice is inevitable. To remain blind is also to choose blindness. To deny the crossroads is to accept a life half-lived. The crossroads are dangerous because they force us into vulnerability. But they are also sacred because they offer transformation. In the stillness of that night, I felt it. The tug of two lives, the one I had built and the one that was calling to me from somewhere deeper. The room became more than shelter, it became a threshold. And standing at that threshold, I understood that what terrifies us about crossroads is also what makes them precious. They hold the power to change everything without warning. Rest is often mistaken for sleep, for closing the eyes and surrendering to darkness, but the body can sleep while the soul stays restless. True rest has nothing to do with the softness of the bed or the silence of the night, it has everything to do with the unburdening of the spirit. We carry so much weight in our days, expectations, regrets, unspoken thoughts, that by the time we reach the night we are not tired from movement but from pretending. And so, even when the body collapses, the mind still races, the heart still aches, and the soul refuses to lie down. That night in the hotel made me realize how deeply we confuse exhaustion with rest. Exhaustion is what happens when the world drains you. Rest is what happens when you finally stop draining yourself. Exhaustion wears the body down, but rest lifts the soul up. We imagine that lying still in darkness will heal us, but what we truly crave is a moment where the masks fall, where no one is watching, where we are permitted to be honest with ourselves without consequence. That is when rest begins, not in silence, but in truth. The pause in that room stripped away distractions, and in the stillness I felt the truth pressing against me. Rest is not the absence of movement, it is the absence of pretending. It is the deep sigh that escapes when you no longer have to play a role. It is the relief of knowing you don't have to impress anyone, prove anything, or silence your own voice. Rest is freedom, and freedom rarely comes from closing your eyes. It comes from opening your heart to the truth you've avoided. The bed that night did not hold me in comfort because of its softness, but because it became a sanctuary where I could finally admit what I had been running from. That is the paradox of rest. It doesn't come when you deny your desires, but when you face them. It doesn't come when you bury your pain, but when you allow yourself to feel it without judgment. In that room, I wasn't resting from the road outside, I was resting from the endless road inside myself. Rest is more than recovery, it is a reunion. A reunion with the self we abandon in the rush to meet expectations. A reunion with the voice inside that is often drowned out by noise. When we find true rest, it is not just our bodies that heal, but our identities, our souls, our forgotten desires. It is a release, not of energy, but of the lies we carry about who we should be. That night, I discovered that the deepest rest comes when you no longer have to perform, when the soul can stretch its arms in the dark and say, "Here I am," without disguise. It was not about sleep at all. It was about surrender. Home is often spoken of as a place, a destination marked by walls and doors, by the people who wait for us there, by the routines that make us feel grounded. But sometimes home is not where we arrive. It is where we finally allow ourselves to arrive within. That night in the hotel, I realized home is not always the place we go to, but the moment we step into honesty with ourselves. It is when we strip away the weight of expectation and whisper truths we never dared to say aloud. We spend so much of our lives returning to houses, to familiar rooms, to the comfort of repetition, believing that these places will give us rest. But how often do we step inside, only to feel like a stranger even in our own space? That is because a building cannot heal what the heart refuses to confront. A familiar bed cannot soothe a soul that feels unseen. A roof may keep out the rain, but it cannot shelter us from the storms we carry inside. Home is not found in addresses or locations. It is discovered in the rare moments when we allow ourselves to stand uncovered, when we no longer hide from our own reflection. That night, the walls of the hotel carried no history. They did not know my name, my story, or the roles I played. And in that anonymity, I felt a freedom I hadn't known in years. I realized home is sometimes found in those unexpected spaces, where no one demands anything from us. It is the feeling of being allowed to simply exist, without justification, without a mask. It is a moment of stillness when you can say, "This is me," and not flinch at the truth of it. The idea of home as a destination can be comforting, but it can also be misleading. We chase it endlessly, thinking we will feel at home when we succeed, when we are loved enough, when we prove ourselves worthy. Yet the harder we chase, the further away it seems. That night reminded me that home is not about chasing. It is about returning to the part of ourselves we have abandoned. It is about embracing the desires we have hidden, the truths we have silenced, and the dreams we have set aside for the sake of survival. Home is not safety from the world, but safety from the endless battle within. It is the moment when you stop running, stop performing, stop apologizing for wanting more. It is when you give yourself permission to inhabit your own life fully, without disguise or denial. For some, that realization comes within familiar walls. For others, it comes unexpectedly, in a fleeting night, in a borrowed space, in the anonymity of a hotel far from the place they call home. That night, I understood home is not where we sleep, it is where we awaken. It is not a place we travel to, but a truth we step into, and sometimes, the most unfamiliar room becomes the place where we finally belong to ourselves. And so, that night on the way home was never just about a hotel, or a bed, or a pause in the journey. It was about the mirror it held up to my soul. It showed me that pauses are sacred, that the life we show and the life we hide are always speaking to each other, that desire is not weakness but the compass of the heart, that crossroads are thresholds where courage is demanded, that true rest is the shedding of masks, and that home is not where we arrive but where we finally allow ourselves to be real. We do not need grand events to awaken us. Sometimes it takes nothing more than a quiet room, a silent night, a space where time loosens its grip and truth rises to the surface. The question is not whether such moments will come, they will. The question is whether we will be brave enough to listen when they arrive. So tonight, let this not be just a story of a journey paused. Let it be a reminder that within every pause, every silence, every hidden longing, lies the invitation to step into ourselves more fully. That is the journey worth taking. That is the destination worth finding. Thank you for walking with me through these words, for allowing me to share not just a memory but a mirror. May you find your own pause, your own crossroad, your own secret doorway into truth. And when you do, may you have the courage to call it home. Goodbye, and thank you.